Hey Hodies, and welcome back to my channel. My name is hautemesstom, and thank you so much for clicking on today's video. What are you looking at? What are you looking at? What do you mean? What do you mean? So I was thinking a lot about end of the year content, and you know how like a lot of times at the end of the year we're like really reflective on how things went for the year. I was feeling pretty reflective, and what I wanted to do is do one half of my face. The way I used to do makeup, I'm thinking roughly 2016 era, but I'm gonna say it's probably like from 2016 to 2018, 2019-ish era of the way I did makeup. That's what we're gonna do. So this half of my face, the left half of my face, is going to be modern day Tom makeup. And then this side of my face, the side with the eyebrow, is going to be that older era of makeup. And I thought this could just be fun so you can see what I do differently now. And the reason that I like broadened it from like 2016 to 2018, I didn't really wear blush there for a long time. And I did want to include blush in the process. And so that was something I definitely got more into in the later years. So it's not like a true 2016, but as you can see, I drew my eyebrow on already, mostly because I can't do the brow routine I used to do because I had eyebrows when I used to do that eyebrow routine. And drawing on eyebrows takes quite a bit of time, especially when you're starting with nothing. So I just wanted to get it out of the way before I jumped on camera. We're going to do one side at a time because I don't think my pea brain can handle doing both sides. I'll talk you through what I used to do. I'll talk you through what I currently do, and we'll see which side we like better. I have a feeling that we all know which side we're going to like better. I know which side I'm going to like better. It's just an interesting activity for us to do. So I hope you enjoy. If you're new to my channel, I would love to have you subscribe. This is a lot of what I do on my channel is like love on my makeup collection as it currently is. And all of this makeup I already own. I'm actually going to prime my full face with the Bobbi Brown Vitamin Enriched Face Base because I actually started using this before my makeup preferences really changed. So I'm just going to apply this to my whole face. I've always used primer, so I'm just going to throw this on real quick. I obviously don't have a lot of the makeup that I used to use when I got into makeup. I have some of it. I wanted to try to also adhere to like the way I used to think about makeup too, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But we're gonna get the primer on, and then we're gonna actually start with the eyes because I've started with my eyes like the whole time I've done makeup. I've like always started with my eye makeup is a little messy, and especially the way I used to do eye makeup. So for my eyes on my old side, my less modern side, I'm actually going to use the Natasha Denona Lila palette. Now, this is a palette that's newer to me. This was given to me by my friend Nicole, also known as Majestic Beast Beauty on Instagram, assuming that's still her handle because she likes to name hop a little bit. But the reason I chose this is because these are actually colors that I was very attracted to. I was very into pink and purple at the time. The pinks and purples I was into were a little more vibrant, but I was definitely like interested in this palette when it first got launched. And that was around the time that I was getting into makeup. So I think it makes a lot of sense for me to be using this palette in this particular project. The first thing I'm going to do is prime my eyes, which I always have done. And then I'm going to also set the primer, which is something that I still do to this day. So I'm using the NARS primer, but back in the day, I used like a MAC paint pot. I would say that was probably my primary eyeshadow primer. And so we have that all over the lid. Sometimes I would use translucent powder, but sometimes I would use an eyeshadow. There was this eyeshadow that was in the Viseart Cool Mattes palette that I completely panned by using it as like my eyeshadow setting powder, essentially. And it's a good way to use up cream eyeshadows. I know a lot of people use cream eyeshadows for like transition shades and such. I like to use it to set my eyeshadow primer. I've always set my eyeshadow primer because I have really oily eyelids, so whenever the oils start breaking through the primer, then it has to break through that other layer of powder. It just has worked best for me, I found, with my oily eyelids, and it's like, obviously, like I said, something I still keep in practice today. I have actually been using the Wayne Goss eyeshadow brushes for a very long time, and since like about the time I got into makeup. But what you're gonna notice here is that my eyebrow, and I actually gave myself some more breadth here. So my actual eyebrow grows down right here. So I did give myself a little bit of grace in the tail. But what you're going to probably come to find as we go through this is that you're going to see how much less eyeshadow space I used to have because of my eyebrows. So there's a lot of playing with warm and cool in this palette, and I think that's something that I would have been more willing to do at the time. Not that I don't do it at all now, but I think back then I would be a little more into using those like red tones with the purples. So I'm just going to take one of these matte shades and I'm going to use it as my transition. Although that's a little bit deeper than I thought it was going to be. Oopsie poopsie. Wow, I haven't said oopsie poopsie in like a really long time. I had this professor in college who said oopsie poopsie. Like, she said it all the time. And not like in regards to her. It was a PR class, and when she would like reference a PR blender, she would be like, and then it was like oopsie poopsie, so and so, blah, blah, blah. The reason I'm doing one side of my face and then the other side of my face is because muscle memory is going to kick in and I have to stay focused on what I'm doing on this side of my face because I just haven't done my makeup like this in a very long time. I probably would have gone in with like a lighter shade, but this palette is pretty mid-toned to begin with, but also it doesn't really matter because we're going to be doing other things to it. And so then I would do a crease shade, and I'm actually going to go into my crease because that is what I used to do. If you watch me, whenever we get to this other side, you'll see that I don't actually go where the fold of my eye is. So I'm putting the eyeshadow, and if I open my eye, it's like in the socket. You know, that's where that eyeshadow is going. It's also interesting, I can tell right away like how much less space I'm like blending into. Wow. We have a real heavy eye going here. And I just feel like this was the way, like I still follow a lot of these principles with the way I do my makeup now, but I feel like I don't adhere to them as like much as I once did. I probably keep my crease shade mostly out here when I do my eye makeup now. And now, like you can see I took it all the way to my nose, and I used to do that. And then I'm going to take a really deep shade and put it out here. Although this shade isn't as deep as I thought it was going to be. The interesting thing about this palette is that it's really hard to tell what the shades are going to look like on the eye. And sometimes that's kind of like par for the course when it comes to Natasha Denona, where it's like, wait, what is that going to actually look like on the eye? Normally it doesn't matter too much, but sometimes when you're working with what you think are going to be lighter tones. Oh yeah, I always did this too. I always took my eyeshadow pretty far out there, something like that. And then I would always take my glitter glue, and I used to use the Too Faced glitter primer. It's so hard to go through one of those. I finished up one before, one time, and this is my second glitter primer, and it's the NYX glitter primer. I think it works kind of just the same. I don't think it's anything like too different. And then what I would do with this is I would like kind of do a cut crease, but like kind of like a faux cut crease. So I will take the glitter primer and I would kind of like open my eye and take the glitter primer right above my lid because I have pretty hooded eyes and I wanted to still be able to see the glitter. And when I say it was kind of a cut crease, it was like sort of. Like I wasn't really, you know, building up this pigment right here that much to make it look that different from the shade I was putting on my lid. But there always was like a distinct line where that happened. And then I actually did use brushes to apply my shimmers back in the day. I mean, if you follow me now, you know that I use my fingers a lot of the time when it comes to eyeshadow. I absolutely know my former self would use this very purpley purple. And I would always go in with whatever I used to cut the crease in with the shadow and then press it like in a line along the edge of where I applied the glitter glue. That's actually not as pigmented as I thought it was going to be. I'm going to go into another one and just kind of like layer it to give it more boldness because I used to wear like bold colors. Now this is giving me kind of like a duochrome effect, but it's not very strong. So not that I wouldn't have, like I was into duochromes at the time, but it's not exactly the same. And then what I would do with the eye is I would take a highlight shade. I'm actually going to use the highlighter that I'm going to use on my face on the inner corner because none of the ones in the Natasha Denona palette... Oh, no, there is one that's bright enough. Hold on. I was lying. And I'm gonna apply it on the inner corner, just right on top of where I applied the other shade. I wouldn't like clean up or anything. And I would like really pack it in there. And then I would also take that highlighting shade and apply it to the brow bone. This is really trippy. I feel like I'm wearing so much makeup already. Unfortunately, we are not done with the eye yet. So I was really into liquid liner back in the day. I don't wear a lot of liquid liner anymore. So I'm going to use a potted gel liner. I'm going to use this one from Blink. This is kind of a cheat, but if I didn't do a wing, it wouldn't be realistic to what I did. And I didn't use like pencil liners to do my wing. So this feels like it's going to give me a more authentic look at least. And I really loved doing a wing. And then it's just thing after thing. Just to make sure that the line was really clean, I will take my concealer and I would put a little on the back of my hand. I'm just using a mixing palette for the sake, because I don't really like using the back of my hand as a mixing palette. And then I would take the concealer on an angle brush and I will clean up. Okay, so that's where we would leave it for the eyes for now. And we're going to start doing complexion. So I was very into full coverage matte foundations, and this was sitting in my declutter bin, and Tiff is giving it a whirl. So I went and I did borrow this from them. It's the Huda Beauty Faux Filter foundation in the shade Vanilla. And I was like into full coverage. I was into full, whoa, I just pumped 2 pumps out for half of my face. I don't know what I was thinking. Although the first clump that came out was a little bit weird looking. Now, I never actually owned this in real time. Now, I know they reformulated this to take out the fragrance in it, so that's a good thing. And I always used to use a makeup sponge, so I actually made sure to dampen my beauty blender. Always a beauty blender. And so much makeup. Oh, this is stressing me out. This is stressing me out. Okay, wow. And I don't know that this is like the best foundation. I don't think it's like the worst foundation match for me, but I also feel like whenever I was doing full coverage, my foundation never matched me because it's just like the nature of it. And I would always blend it down my neck, and I would make sure to get it in my ear because you had to. You just had to. The way that we used to use these like full coverage matte foundations and then think that we needed concealer, I lost a little bit of my eyebrow. Okay, so then I'd take concealer. I don't know that, I'm gonna pivot. I was gonna use that concealer, but that concealer matches me, and I really liked to do a brightening concealer. So I'm actually gonna take the Surratt Dewdrop Concealer in the shade 1. This is scary. And I used to do this. And then I would also do concealer on my forehead and down my nose. I would do some here too. I feel like the Dewdrop Concealer is just kind of getting lost in the foundation because it's so full coverage. The foundation's so full coverage. And then I would powder. So I used to use like the Laura Mercier. Right now, as far as loose powders go, I have the Givenchy, and we're gonna bake. And I used to just take my sponge and I would go, and I would only do it in the center of my face. I wouldn't really powder anywhere else, just kind of right where I put concealer, but not where I put foundation. I'm wearing so much makeup. What would we do next? So I would contour. I would powder contour though, and I don't think I have any powder contours at this juncture. What I used to use was the Lunatic Cosmetics Labs contour powder, and it was like a very gray. And this taupe shade that's in the Lila palette, I think is gonna work as a substitute. I just don't have any powder contours right now, so just kind of like problem solving here. And I took a contour brush and I would load it up and I would, ooh, that's an eyeshadow, Tom. Ooh, that's an eyeshadow. Well, it doesn't matter because I would probably use this much contour anyway. And then I would probably look at that and go, ooh, that's not really blended. And then I would take my beauty blender and blend it out. I wasn't trying to do this poorly, by the way, but I certainly would, I would contour there, up here, and I would use the KVD like contour palette. Next up would be bronzer, and at the time, I feel like I used that Lunatic Cosmetics Labs like as kind of my full contour, but I would also had the Burberry bronzer. So I'm gonna use my Tom Ford bronzer. I think of the bronzers I currently have, this is the closest thing I have to that bronzer. And I'm going to be using this powder brush because this is the shape of brush that I would use whenever I used to bronze. And I would kind of just go over where I would contour with the bronzer. And the first time I learned how to bronze, the person told me to do it in threes down the face. And that's what I would do. I am sorry. I forgot that I was using eyeshadow to contour. I feel bad because it would have been noticeable, but I don't think it would have looked like that even at my worst. I'm kind of carefree with bronzer now, but I feel like I was even more carefree with bronzer then. So for blush, I picked this Kaleidos blush. I wasn't really into pink blushes, but I figured the pink would go the best with what I'm doing currently. And I would always use this brush. Sephora doesn't make this brush anymore. Pro Angled Diffuser brush. It was the old number 60. And I would blush right here. Now that I'm going to highlight, the powder under my eyes is in the way. So in the great tradition of Tati, we have to kick off the bake. Do you remember when she would say that all the time? She'd be like, and now we kick off the bake. I'm just gonna use this brush because I know it's only been used for powder. My under eye looks bad. Everything looks bad. Next up would be highlighter. I was a highlighter girly. So I'm gonna take an eyeshadow brush and kind of very fancy free apply highlight. And something that I used to always do, I occasionally do this now, but in a much less dramatic fashion. I always used to do drop shadow, so we're gonna do some drop shadow. So drop shadow is just whatever you go under the lower lashes. That's what we called it in beauty school. I just assumed that's what it's like officially called. And I would just take whatever the darkest shade on my lid was and blend it out on the lower. And oftentimes I would take it all the way to the inner corner. Now, I know a lot of people still kind of like do drop shadow, which I think is cool, but something that I've learned about my eyes as I've gotten better at makeup is that my eyes are pretty small, and I don't think that means I have to like follow all the rules for small eyes, but something that I take into consideration, like I of course love a really smoky eye with like my eyes all closed off, but like this was just what I would do. It was an automatic what I would do. No considerations taken. It was just like what I was going to do. And then I would take a black eyeliner and do the waterline and tightline. But I don't have black eyeliner right now, so I'm going to use Ash from Victoria Beckham. I used to use Black Coffee from Pat McGrath. That was the eyeliner I used for the longest time. Look at this cheek. That was crazy. I'm gonna fix up my eyeliner. That's something I would do, but I just need to, it's looking a little weird. Sometimes you get that beauty blender a little too close and it messes up the illusion. And then for lip, I'm gonna wipe off. I always did a like pigmented liquid lip. The only liquid lip that I have that is a traditional liquid lip is the red one I have from About Face. And I don't think that would really go. But something I would do a lot is wear pink and purple with each other. So I'm just going to apply this to half my lips. Very rarely did I ever use lip liner. So also just to note, today's video isn't really about the products. It's about the effect that they're giving. I'll have everything linked down below, but I feel like I often get questions about this particular lipstick shade. It's the Patrick Ta She's Hard to Get. This is how I used to do my makeup. I'm gonna zoom you in so you can get a really good look. And so look at that under eye. Ooh, that's tough stuff. That's tough stuff. I'm cleaning my brushes after this. Full stop. I'm gonna finish with Fix Plus, by the way. I would do that back then. I'm gonna do it now, but it's still something that I would do. Let's work on my half of the face, what I do currently. I still most of the time start with my eyes. So like I said, eyeshadow primer. I think I actually applied eyeshadow primer to this eye. You sure didn't, Tom. You were actually doing it right. You should have just applied it. Whenever I did it, I think I applied it to both. Okay, so it's already dried. It doesn't really need set, but that's what I would normally do. Where's my brush? There's so much makeup on the counter because like half of my face is gonna be like one bit of makeup and the other half of my face is gonna be the other bit of makeup. And what I thought I would do with this eye is I have been into cool tones, and you know, we have some cool tones going on over here. So I'm gonna show you how I would do cool tones now. So I'm gonna use the Aim Higher palette from LH Cosmetics to start, and then we're gonna go into another product. And that's very how I do my makeup now. Like I will take like mattes and shimmers from one palette and then I will go into something else. So that's like very indicative of what I do now. But back in the day, I would just kind of stick to the one eyeshadow palette, kind of like limit myself in my makeup collection and be like, well, I can only use shadows from this palette. And I've gotten away from that within the last couple of years, but it was for a very long time, just like how I viewed things. What I'm gonna do first is essentially do the same thing. Start with like a transition shade. And what you'll probably notice is that I'm applying it like right here and blending it over. And this is like where my eyebrow would be. And it's much more faint, much more watercolory is what I would say. And I think what will be interesting also to see as I'm doing this is that I'm basically doing like the same steps in just like a more refined manner, I guess is like what I want to say is like it's just a little more refined. And then I'm going to take this mid-tone gray and I'm going to use that as a crease. And the way I do it now is I mostly blend out the crease shade in the outer corner and then I bring like what's left on the brush over. And so you'll see that I'm going higher than my actual crease, whereas I put the crease shade like in the socket on this eye. And then I will just kind of like lightly build this up. And so that's where we're at. So you can see that we're already like much higher. Everything's just kind of more lifted. I'm now gonna go in with that black shade. I'm just gonna keep it on the outer V here. But a lot of times I go a little bit further out from my eye, like where my actual eye is. I picked up a different brush to blend it out with because I don't want it to be so saturated. And I do like blend the excess up into the crease as well. And sometimes I do go back into the first shade and blend out the edges. And I'm gonna go back into that pigmented black and just kind of focus it right here, but use a different brush again to blend it out. So you see how we have similar ideas happening on both eyes? Like, it's like this is like the way that I would used to do it, and then this is just kind of like what I would do now, even with the same color story. Now, I could have used the same palette to demonstrate this even better, but I don't think that would be... But I do think that I just use eyeshadow differently now, like digging into different palettes, and so I wanted to show you that. And like, while I like the Lila palette, it's not my favorite palette, so I think it would have been my favorite palette in like 2016, but right now, not my favorite palette. And now recently, this is like a recent thing that I just started doing, is I do my eyeliner before I apply shimmers, because what I've found recently is that like anytime I apply eyeliner after shimmers, that's where I get the most fallout. And even though I'm doing my eye makeup first, it's still a pain to clean up fallout, and I'd rather just not do it. So I do my wings very smudgy, and I just kind of like, ooh, that's a little more than I would want, but sloppily draw that on, and then take a pencil brush and blend it out. I do actually want a black eyeliner again. I sometimes want to do something more dramatic than what I've been able to do with this ash shade. And while it's really pretty, it is kind of like, you know, it's not stronger than the black that I had put down first. It kind of is the same shade. That's something I'm currently considering. And then I'm also gonna put it in my waterline and tightline. And then for my sparkle, I do like a lot of indie shadows. That's like a more modern version of me, but the Surratt shade in Pluie Mauve, I feel like is the translucent version of this. And I really like that about it. So I'm just gonna go in with a brush in Pluie Mauve and just apply that to the eye. I'm gonna go in with my finger, which I also do, to build it up. See how the eyes are like, same idea, different applications? If you are someone who does your makeup like this, either you're getting into makeup and this is how you do your makeup, this is not to shame you. It just is, my preferences right now. So let's move on to complexion. For my foundation today, I'm gonna be using the Prada foundation. I'm gonna do a video on it, don't worry, but it won't be until the new year because I don't have the bandwidth for it to do before the end of the year. So I just squirted a little bit of that out. I've already primed my face, as you remember, and I'm a brush person now. I really rarely ever am using a sponge to do makeup. I think the sponges are a great tool. I just like the way that brushes apply, and I think that brushes just like spread things out a little bit better. So you can see that the Prada foundation is much more luminous and it doesn't have nearly as much coverage and just kind of looks more at home on my skin rather than sitting on top of it, because it does feel like I have a mask on this side of my face. Oh wow, does this also feel really heavy? Like I can feel it on my skin. The Prada foundation feels light as air on this side of my face. And like it does feel light as air, but like I think especially whenever I have this intensity competing over here. And I'm going to take the same concealer, but this is the shade 2, and I'm going to apply a little bit of that under my eyes. And I only apply it here now because that's where I feel like if I need any coverage, it right there is where I need it. So much less concealer. And I'm going to actually highlight now with the Auric Glow Lust. I'm going to pump some of that out. And yeah, I don't know, like I still like highlighter. I just don't like it as much as I once did. I just said this in my other video where I was like, there are still people who are very into highlight. And so I'm going to take this where I would normally apply like everything on my cheek except for contour, and also above my eyebrow. I really like the effect of the highlighter going up above my eye where my eyebrow would be, because now that I don't have eyebrows, I think that when a highlighter just goes to here, it is distracting. Like the fact that this doesn't connect up here is like I think it's a distraction to the eye. Also, when you do this with the highlighter, it kind of blends out the outer edge if it's looking a little bit harsh. So there's that going for it too. Everything I'm using on this side is creams, which is like the complete opposite. Now, I do still play with powder. I'm not saying that I never use powder products, but this was specifically powder based, and now everything over here is going to be like much more creamy. And like I said, I do sometimes all cream looks, but also it's not all I do. I don't want to say that, you never see me apply a powder complexion product, because that's not true. I'm going to use the shade Intuition from Witch Will Defeat and do a cream contour. And I'm just going to pat it in. To be fair to 2016 me, I was using an eyeshadow and I forgot. So this does look little bit bananas, but not really far off from what I did. I do apologize to 2016 era me, and I do kind of just contour in the same places. Just, I don't take it out as far. Like the contour here goes like out to here. The contour here would come down further. But like this is almost imperceptible. Where like this is perceptible. I was like, I want you to know that I'm contouring. And then for bronzer, I'm going to be using the Phytosurgeons shade 2, which is Rosy Daybreak, and take a stippling brush and tap it into the skin. Now, I think this is a really good representation of bronzers I like now. The bronzers that I prefer are much less orange and definitely lean a little more into that rosiness. And Rosy Daybreak, I think, is like a really, really good version of that. And I still kind of do it in the same places. For blush today, I'm going to use Inner Glow from Kira Weiss. I've been really into beige blushes within the last year, just much more subtle blushes. And I'm just going to pat that. Also kind of like higher than I used to apply blush. I'm keeping it almost exactly where I applied the highlighter, just a little bit under that. You can see how this all just kind of drags my face down, which with the way I do things now is like about lifting. And I'm feeling a little bit dramatic today. So I'm going to take some of the excess highlighter I have on my palette and tap it over top of the blush. And now I am going to powder. So I do I still wear a lot of powder, but in a different way. I use the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush Brightening Powder, and I use that right under my eye. And I do this instead of using a brightening concealer. I do like a concealer that matches, and then this powder will do a little bit of brightening to just kind of like bring that all together. And then for powdering my face, I'm going to use the Givenchy again. But I'm going to apply it a little bit differently and just sweep it on the center of my face up underneath the highlighter. I don't want to put it really on the highlighter. I'm not trying to set the highlighter. I don't want to mattify the highlighter. And then just brush it over all the areas. I also sometimes, and I'll do it now since we're doing the most TM, I will also apply this down the center of my nose and where I kind of where I used to apply concealer to highlight. It's not what's going on over here. Of course, the Blur powder from Kackie. Gonna take some of that and just buff it into where my pores are the largest, which is on my forehead and the front part of my cheeks. And now I'm gonna spray my face. I'm gonna spray it on both sides because that's what I would do. And then for lips, I've been using a lot of lip liner recently, and this one's my favorite one. This is Endless Cacao from Makeup Forever. And I'm going to top it off with the Candy Glaze in Scenic Brown. I didn't do anything crazy with mascara. I used to like sometimes fuss with putting on false lashes. I don't do that anymore, so I'm just going to apply my mascara to both eyes. So here it is, the final looks. So, old me, new me. I'll zoom you in so you could take a closer look. So ultimately, what you're seeing here is also a matter of age. Like, I feel like my 26-year-old skin could like handle all of this, but my 33-year-old skin really, I feel like handles this a lot better. Now, this is still very fun, and I think it's like very cool that I like used to really take the time to do all of that, but I am much more at home in what's going on this side of my face. We're at the end of the video. Let me know which side you prefer. If any of you prefer this side, I'll be honestly shocked. But how did you used to do your makeup? Like, what's the biggest change in your makeup from like a couple of years ago to what you do now? Because like this is a pretty big leap. And something that I recently mentioned, and this is not to say that this isn't beautiful and that this isn't work and this isn't cool, but something I said on the podcast with Kackie recently was that maybe this episode hasn't aired, but like I just like feeling pretty, and like this is what makes me feel pretty. Like this soft, look is just so, so pretty to me. And this harsh look, again, it's really cool. And like if I did both sides of my face like this, it'd be really interesting to see what that would look like all over my face. But right now it's like kind of fun to play with the side by side. Anyway, if you happen to be new to my channel and you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. My channel is mostly about loving my makeup collection as it currently is, while helping you and myself build the habit of being more discerning about the purchasing we do with makeup. So if that kind of content sounds good to you, I would love to have you subscribe. Also keep in mind, I sometimes get PR with the size that I am. And sometimes I do buy things explicitly for review, but I try to be very vocal about when that's happening. And even if I do get something in PR, sometimes I'll still like something, but I will tell you not to buy it because I don't think it's worth your money, but I ended up liking it because I got it for free. I try to be very honest about all of that. My relationship with makeup is just going to be different than yours with what I do here. I'm also on patreon.com if you'd like to support me there. That's patreon.com/hautemesstom. Over there, I do my podcast with Kackie of Kackie Reviews Beauty. That comes out every week, and I also do additional content solo with my by myself. You can check that out. There's no pressure to ever join my Patreon. I'm happy that you are here watching my content, sharing, liking, and commenting. So I appreciate all of that just as much, but thank you to all of my current patrons. You are the best. And I think that's everything. I have merch. You can follow me on Instagram at hautemesstom. You can do that. You don't have to do that. Whatever you want. But remember to follow your hope and you'll find me. I'll see you in a video very soon. Bye-bye.